After a while, the herbalist announced that she was pregnant. Everyone was shocked, including Obehi, because she had never known any man. And there was confusion in the room, and the villagers started murmuring. Once upon a time, in a village in the south, there lived a young girl called Obehi. Obehi was a very beautiful girl, and she was the only child of her parents before they died. She was a very kind and respectful girl, and people in the village loved and respected her. Mothers in the village often use her as an example to teach their little ones about good characters and morals. And children all over the village loved her because she often made them sweet snacks every market day. Obey had a friend called Ehije, and he was very handsome, and the villagers always called them a couple. One day, when Obehi was in the market selling her fruits, she fell on the ground and fainted. The villagers rushed her to the herbalist, and after a while, the herbalist announced that she was pregnant. Everyone was shocked, including Obehi, because she had never known any man. There was confusion, and the villagers started murmuring. When the villagers had all gone, they began to spread the news like wildfire. Obehi told the herbalist that she had never known any man, and that what she is saying cannot be true. The herbalist examined her body and confirmed that truly Obehi was a virgin. She was shocked and was unable to give Obehi an answer.
This is a mystery, and we have never seen a thing like this before.
She gave Obehi some herbs and she left. On her way home, some villagers started gossiping about her, and no one responded to her greetings. Obehi felt embarrassed and she ran home crying. When Ehije heard about this, he was surprised and he ran straight to Obehi. Obehi told him everything. He was confused. He comforted Obehi and told her that all would be well. But Obehi was scared because of what the villagers might do to her. The next morning, when she was preparing to go to the market, she heard noises coming from afar. When she peeped through the window, she saw that the villagers were approaching her house with sticks, brooms, and all sorts of objects. Obehi took a few things and left through the back door. On her way, she saw Ehije and told him everything she saw. Ehije took the bag from her and they took to their heels and ran as fast as they could. The villagers burnt down Obehi's house as they couldn't find her. Obehi and Ehije succeeded in escaping, and they found themselves in a strange land. Obehi asked Ehije to return back to his village and live his normal life, but he told her that she was the only family he had, as he too was an orphan. In order to keep Obehi's secret, Ehije asked her to marry him and she accepted. They both prayed to their God and started living together as husband and wife. Something strange happened in Evo land, and they started experiencing greatness since the very day they stepped their foot on the village. The crops began to do well, and there were more fishes in the river. The villagers began to celebrate. Ehige and Obehi both started a trade and were able to take care of themselves. Each day passed, and the baby in Obehi's belly grew stronger. When it was closer to the day Obehi was to deliver, a prophecy came, and in the prophecy, a virgin would give birth to a savior that would bring honor to the land. And when it was time for the child to be born, there was a heavy rainfall that lasted for several days, and the elders in the village confirmed that a great one was on his way. When Obehi gave birth, there was a great calm in the village. Everyone gathered to see the child, and he was named Osedebame. The elders prayed for him and blessed his mother. Even the king came bearing gifts because the child was indeed a blessing to the people. Osedebame was not just any child. He grew up to be a very wise healer, and the kingdom of Evo became very prosperous. People traveled from afar to seek his counsel, and others to seek healing. He had the cure to all diseases and the solution to all problems. And because of that, he brought honor to his parents. When the people from their village heard of him, they decided to see for themselves, as their village had been suffering and there was a great famine. When they got there, they offered gifts and sought for help, and Osedebame gave them all they needed. But they were shocked to find out that he was the son of Obehi, and they buried their heads in shame and went back home and told the people all that they found out. It was that time Ehige told the people of Ewo land how Osedebame came about, and the king and elders confirmed the prophecy. They thanked Ehige for all he had done and praised Obehi for becoming the chosen one. Osedebame became the wisest and the greatest healer of his time. The kingdom of Ewo never lacked any good thing, and danger was far away from them. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to this story. Please do not forget to subscribe, like and share this video, and also comment where you are watching from below. We love and appreciate you. She deliberately injured herself and poured some water into the calabash and drank from it. And immediately the wound was healed. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Ekanem. She grew up with her father and her wicked stepmother Yejide. Ekanem was a hardworking girl, and she loved and respected everyone around her. When Ekanem's father died, her stepmother Yejide drove her out of the house. Ekanem had to go and live by herself at a very young age. One day, when Ekanem went to the market, she saw the villagers beating an elderly woman and dragging her through the village. She asked her friend Bola about what was going on, and Bola told her that the woman was caught in the act of witchcraft and had been sentenced to die in the forest. Ekanem felt pity for her and decided to follow the crowd to the forest. When they were about to carry out the order, the woman looked at Ekanem and saw that she was sad. She immediately knew that she had a kind heart, and she said to her, "Go into my house. You will find a calabash. It is very different from the others and unique. When you see it, you will know. Take it and use it as you please. But be careful. If you use it for a wrong reason, it will also ruin your life. It is the calabash of death and life. And do not..." Before she could finish, the others were taken out, and she took her last breath. It was very strange because only Ekanem was able to hear her. Ekanem asked Bola if she heard what the woman said, and she told her she didn't. The woman was taken deep into the forest to be buried. That night, Ekanem could not sleep. She thought of everything the woman said. The next day, Ekanem decided to visit the house. It was an old hut, and everyone was forbidden from going there. Ekanem quietly sneaked into the house and began to look for the calabash. Not too long, she saw it, and it was as the woman described. She was curious to know what exactly was inside. She took the calabash and shook it, but nothing was inside. Ekanem felt she had wasted her time, and she became angry. Just when she was about to leave, she dashed her feet against the calabash and fell, and injured her hand. Ekanem started bleeding. In anger, she threw the calabash against the wall, but surprisingly, it did not break. But rather, her wounded hand was healed. This was so strange, and Ekanem realized that truly the calabash was special. She quickly rearranged the room and left with the calabash. The next day, she went to the market as usual to help Iya Bimpe sell akara. When she was done selling, she went to see her friend Bola. When she got to Bola's house, she found out that Bola's mother was on her sick bed and Bola was sad. They've tried all the herbs the herbalist gave them, but there was no improvement on her health. Ekanem felt so sad. She encouraged Bola and gave her from the akara Iya Bimpe gave her earlier to eat, and she went home. On her way, an idea came to her. If the strange calabash can heal my wound, that means it can also cure this poor woman. I must look for a way to heal her without anyone finding out, she said to herself. Ekanem hurriedly went home. She took the calabash and wrapped it with her clothes. But she stopped and thought to herself, if this heals her, they must ask me what it is, and eventually they would find out that it is the calabash and accuse me of witchcraft. Ekanem stayed in her room and stared at the calabash for a very long time till an idea came to her. She deliberately injured herself and poured some water into the calabash and drank from it, and immediately the wound was healed. Ekanem took from the water and went to Bola's house. She gave some of the water to Bola's mother, and immediately she was healed. They all started rejoicing, and soon the villagers gathered and they asked how it happened. And Bola told them it was Ekanem that gave her mother some herbs. The villagers were amazed and they thanked Ekanem. Ekanem was filled with joy and she went home very happy. The next day, she took some of the water from the calabash and secretly sprinkled some on the akara Iyabimpe was making. Everyone who tasted the akara would come back for more, and she finished selling the akara within the first hour of making them. Iyabimpe was so happy and she gave Ekanem a good reward that day. That evening, she thought of ways to use the calabash to improve the lives of people without them finding out who gave her the power. She decided to start selling agbo, a local traditional herb. She bought plenty of calabash and made a lot of agbo, which she mixed with water from the calabash. She hawked it round the village, and everyone who drank from the herbs were immediately healed. Ekanem was so happy because she was about to do something good for the people, and she made very good money from it. Some people even rewarded her with food items whenever they have fresh harvest, and Ekanem will share them with the needy in the village. Things became very good for her, and a lot of villagers became proud of her. Not too long, her stepsister Yewande became very sick, and the villagers told Yejide that it was only Ekanem that could save her. Yejide went to Ekanem and began to cry and beg her to forgive her and save Yewande. Ekanem, with so much compassion, felt pity for her and gave her some herbs. When Yewande drank the herbs, she was well and her health went back to how it was before. They both fell on their knees and thanked Ekanem. Ekanem forgave Yejide, and they all reunited as a family. Everything started working well for Ekanem, and she moved out of the old lonely hut into a very good hut. But her success did not sit well with her best friend Bola. She became very jealous of Ekanem and was so eager to know where her powers came from. She began to spy on her day and night. And one day, she saw how Ekanem was making the herbs with the calabash. Bola was shocked and she patiently waited for Ekanem to leave the house. When Ekanem was far gone, Bola took the calabash and quietly left the hut. She took it home and began to do exactly what Ekanem was doing. She told her mother about it, and her mother joined her and helped her to keep the calabash. The next day, when Ekanem was about to make some herbs, she could not find the calabash. She searched everywhere for it. She could not find it. Ekanem cried, but her tears could not bring back the calabash. She could not ask people about it because they would find out where the power came from. Very soon, people started seeking for her help, but she told them that the special plants she was using for the herbs had withered, and she needed some months for the young ones to reproduce. Not too long, Bola and her mother started the trade. They collected huge amounts of money from people in order to treat them. Depending on the severity of the illness, Bola would demand for plot of land, basket of yam, and other huge items. One day, Ekanem summoned some courage and asked Bola about the calabash. At first, Bola denied, but later she admitted that she took the calabash. Ekane asked her to return it, but she refused and threatened to tell the villagers that Ekane was using witchcraft to heal them. Ekane was scared for her life, and so she decided to let it go, and she went home sad. Bola continued to extort people, and not too long, people started dying one after the other in the village, and their deaths were all connected to Bola's herbs. Immediately, Ekane remembered what the witch told her. If you use it for the wrong reason, it becomes the calabash of death. Ekane went to seek help from a very powerful native doctor. She told him everything about the calabash, and the native doctor told her to stop Bola immediately and take the calabash from her. Ekane ran to Bola's house and begged her to stop, but she refused. Ekane ran to the palace and told the king everything that had happened. And the king immediately sent some guards to go and arrest Bola and her mother and bring them straight to the palace. The guards did exactly what they were told and brought them to the palace alongside the calabash. When the king saw the calabash, he was surprised because it was what the chief priest was using before it was stolen by the witches many years ago, even before he was born. He ordered the guards to arrest Ekane as well for going into the witch's hut, and the royal calabash was handed over to the chief priests. When the day of the judgment came, the villagers pleaded with the king to forgive Ekane because she used it for good purpose, and she was not aware that it belonged to the royal palace. The king asked Ekane why she did that, and she told the king that she couldn't watch the villagers suffer any form of sickness, knowing she was capable of healing them. When the king heard this, he realized that Ekane had good heart, and he ordered her release and rewarded her. When the king asked the villagers about Bola and her mother, the villagers said bad things about them. The king banished them from the village and returned the villagers' properties back to them. Bola and her mother left the village in shame, and the calabash was returned back to the royal shrine, and the village never knew any sickness or harm ever again. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to this story. Please do not forget to subscribe, like and share this video, and also comment where you are watching from below. We love and appreciate you. I am the village's ugly girl, and no one wants to see my face. I have a scar that irritates everyone, so I always covered it to save myself from the embarrassment. Once upon a time, in a very rich village, there lived a king and queen. They were so kind and peaceful. The villagers loved them, and they ruled them gloriously. The king and his wife loved each other so much, and after many years of marriage, she finally became pregnant. The news spread round the village, and the villagers were so happy and eager to meet the child. The people showered the queen with lots of gifts for a very long time, but their joy was cut short.
A tragedy struck and the neighboring village declared war on them. The war lasted for many days, and the women in the village, including the queen, were hidden in a secret room to protect them. Their enemies defeated a lot of their warriors, and soon they became exposed to danger. One night, the queen went into labor that lasted for several hours. When it was time for her to give birth, she gave birth to a baby girl. But something strange happened, and the baby did not cry. After a few minutes of birth, the midwife announced that the child was dead. This broke the people's hearts. The midwife wrapped the baby, and the queen said her goodbye. The dead baby was handed over to a warrior to go and secretly bury, as the village was surrounded by the enemy's soldiers. But the warrior's life was cut short by the soldiers. The village suffered a great loss and they were defeated. Only the king, some few men and women survived. Most of their properties and livestock were taken, and their houses were set ablaze. After the war, the villagers began to rebuild afresh. There was starvation that season, and the people had to manage the little that they had. A year passed, and the king and queen were blessed with a son, and they named him Achike. King Arinze and his wife were so happy, and they finally felt joy after so much pain caused by the war and the loss of their child. Prince Achike grew up to be a very happy and hardworking boy, and the people loved him. Not too long, the wicked king from the neighboring village died, and his son was crowned king. When he was told of his late father's ill deeds, he decided to make amends. He reached out to all the villages affected and extended a hand of peace. King Arinze forgave them, and the kingdom were at peace with each other, and they began to trade with each other. One day, in one of Achike's travels, he decided to take a quick rest by the riverside. After a while, he heard someone singing. The voice was so beautiful that it melted his heart. When the music stopped, Achike was eager to know who was singing. As he looked around, he saw a girl, and when he approached her, she grabbed her scarf, covered her face, and ran away. Achike ran after her, and after a while, she ran into a hut. Achike stopped and asked a villager who she was, and they told him that she was a nobody. Achike found that hard to believe because the voice kept sounding in his head. He went towards the door and knocked on it. The girl was scared, and with her shaking voice, she asked who Achike was and what he wanted. Achike complimented her singing and begged her to open the door. At first, she refused, but after almost an hour of knocking, she opened the door with her face covered with a scarf. Her name was Nadia. Her voice was so unique and beautiful that Achike wanted to know more about her. He asked her why her face was covered. "I am the village's ugly girl, and no one wants to see my face. I have a scar on my face that irritates everyone, so I always covered it to save myself from the embarrassment," Nadia said to Achike. When Achike heard this, he begged Nadia to take it off, but Nadia refused and said she was ashamed of her look. Achike apologized and felt pity for her. They talked for a long time, and after a while, he begged her to sing for him, and she sang melodiously. Achike thanked her and he left. When he got to his village that day, he kept thinking of Nadia and her charming voice. And the next morning, he disguised himself again and went to see her, and soon they became very good friends. One day, he begged Nadia to let him see her face. When Nadia took off the scars were not the only thing Achike saw. She had a very fine nose and a very beautiful hair, and her smile was charming. Achike told her that she was the most beautiful girl he had ever seen, and she looked just like his mother. Nadia thought he was just joking, but soon he realized the seriousness in his eyes. She became so happy as no one has ever said that to her before. Since that day, she felt so comfortable being around Achike. Achike would help her with some chores, and not too long, Nadia gained confidence and she started leaving the house without covering her face. People were surprised and they bullied her, but this did not stop her. One day, when she was buying some items from the village market, a girl named Ezine came to bully her as usual. She called Nadia a beast, but Nadia smiled at her. "I am the most beautiful girl I have ever seen, and there is nothing that you can do or say that will make me think otherwise," she said to Ezine. Ezine was shocked at her confidence and she buried her head in shame. Ever since then, she never troubled Nadia again, and soon Nadia's confidence grew and the villagers got tired of bullying her. Achike was so happy and he asked Nadia about her parents. Nadia told him that she never knew her birth parents and that her foster father, who adopted her, died some years ago, and her foster mother drove her out of the house because she never liked her and always told her that she was bad luck. She told Achike that whenever she was sad, she would begin to sing. Achike's heart melted and he began to like Nadia more. He told his parents about her and they asked him to invite her to the palace. When Achike told Nadia that he was a prince, Nadia was surprised because he behaved so simple and was never proud. And she agreed to follow Achike to see his parents. Upon getting to the palace, she was welcomed as a friend of the prince. When the king and queen saw her, the queen's spirit was unsettled. She stared at Nadia all through the meeting till Nadia became so uncomfortable and requested to leave. "Have we met before? You look so familiar," the queen said to Nadia. Everyone was surprised and wondered how they might have known each other before. That night, the queen could not sleep. She kept telling the king that her spirit was unsettled because of Nadia. The next day, she sent some people to go and find out everything about her. When they returned, they told her all that they could gather. She is the adopted daughter of late Igbodo, a very powerful warrior in their village. He died some years back and her foster mother drove her out of the house because she felt Nadia caused the death of her husband, they said to the queen. The queen could not rest. She asked Prince Achike to invite Nadia over. And the next day, Achike came with Nadia and the queen welcomed her warmly. "Please tell me all about yourself," she said to Nadia. Nadia was surprised at first and she began to respond to the queen. "I am originally from this village. My father adopted me when I was just a baby. He said during the war, a soldier carrying me was killed. I fell to the ground and injured my face. When he heard me, he said I opened my eyes, but I never cried, rather I held his finger. He could not let go of me, and he took me to his village where he took care of me as his own child. People believed I was cursed because I never cried as a baby," she said to the queen. Just when she was about to continue, the queen began to cry uncontrollably. Nadia asked why she was crying, and she asked Nadia if she had any birthmark on her thigh, and Nadia showed her. The queen was so happy and she called everyone and told them what Nadia had said. Nadia was confused and the queen told her everything that happened when she was born during the war. "You are my daughter, Nadia, and the birthmark has just proven that." Everyone in the palace were amazed and were happy for the new discovery. The news of the princess's return spread through the village, and she was immediately being addressed by her new title. Achike was very happy. "So truly you are my sister, and my older one at that," he said to Nadia, and they both teased each other. The queen and king immediately started giving her royal treatment, and maidens were assigned to her. Not too long, the scar on her face cleared out, and she was truly the most beautiful girl. Everyone who saw her were amazed, and not too long, plenty suitors started seeking for her hand in marriage. When Nadia visited her old village, no one recognized her. They all greeted her as a princess. All who saw her were amazed, and when they found out that it was Nadia, they buried their heads in shame. During her visit, she caught the eyes of the prince, and one thing led to another. They fell in love with each other. After some months, Prince Ekene told his father of his intentions towards Nadia, and they immediately went to see King Arinze and the queen. Nadia consented to the marriage, and they both agreed that their union would be a way to unite the two kingdoms forever. Nadia and Prince Ekene got married, and a wedding feast was held. They both lived happily ever after, and the kingdoms were at peace with each other. This is the end of this story. The moral lesson of this story is not to bully anyone and to show people some compassion as they may be going through difficult situations in their life that they did not create for themselves. Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you. You are such a disgrace. I regret having a daughter like you. You are worthless to me. Leave my house before I have the servants throw you out. Once upon a time, there lived a woman called Uloma and her husband Emeka. Uloma came from a very wealthy home. Her father was a goldsmith and he also had a lot of plantations. She was her father's favorite child.
until she got married to Emeka. Her father was against the marriage because Emeka was not from a responsible home. And when Uloma decided to go ahead with it, her father disowned her. People in the village were surprised at how Mazi Okocha's daughter was able to marry a man like Emeka. Uloma convinced Emeka and they both left the village together. They both started life afresh, and after some time, Uloma started making little profit from her akara business. Not too long, Emeka began to show his true character. He was very lazy and would depend solely on Uloma. Uloma began to regret marrying him and going against her father's wish. Every day, Uloma would wake up very early and prepare food for her husband before going to the market to sell akara. And when she comes back, Emeka will collect all the profits from her and use it to drink and gamble. And whenever she refuses to give him the money, he would beat her to stupor. Uloma would cry herself to sleep every night. She thought of leaving the marriage, but it was an abomination for a woman to leave her husband, as it always comes with a lot of shame. This continued for a long time, and eventually Uloma accepted her fate. Uloma tried for many years to have a child, but it was to no avail. Emeka would mock her every time and call her a barren woman. This broke her heart, but she continued to work hard. One night, an unfaithful incident took place. Uloma was robbed by a group of thieves in the village. They took everything they had at home and left them with nothing. She cried all through the night and for several days. Uloma could not trade anymore because all her resources were stolen. One night, Emeka came home drunk. Uloma and him had a very serious fight that night, and he forced himself on her. That night she could not bear it anymore. She picked up her pieces and left the house. The next morning, she traveled back to her village and went to her father's house. She fell on the floor and started begging her father for forgiveness. Mazi Okocha rained insults on her and asked her to leave his house and never come back. "You are such a disgrace. I regret having a daughter like you. You are worthless to me. Leave my house before I have the servants throw you out," he said angrily to Uloma. Uloma's mother tried begging her father, but Mazi Okocha threatened to throw her out of the house if she does not keep her mouth shut. Uloma continued to beg her father, and after a while, he called some of his servants to throw her out of the house. After a few days of wandering around the village, people started laughing at her. Didn't her father warn her not to marry that man? Such a shame, some said, while others said, "I wonder the atrocity she might have committed to make that poor man send her away." Some even said that her husband drove her out of the house because she committed adultery. Such a pity, she cannot even stay in her husband's house, others said. All these words pierced Uloma's heart, and she couldn't take it anymore. The shame was too much, and she decided to leave the village. After walking for over 2 days, she got to another village. Not sure of what she would do next, she decided to rest by a little hut. While she was at it, an old woman came out and woke her up. Her name was Mama Ejima. Mama Ejima asked Uloma what she was doing beside her hut. Uloma was scared at first, but she told Mama Ejima her whole story. The old woman felt pity for her and asked her to come inside her hut. She gave Uloma food and shelter and told her that she could stay with her until she gets a place of her own. Uloma was so grateful and she showed some appreciation to the woman. Mama Ejima was a very strong herbalist. Her medicine was known throughout the village. One day, when Uloma was doing the house chores, she fell and fainted. Mama Ejima gave her some herbs and examined her. When she was fully awake, she told Uloma that she was pregnant. Uloma was shocked. Then suddenly she remembered what happened the night that she left her husband. She was sad because she was barely able to take care of herself, talk more of a child. Mama Ejima consoled her and told her that all would be well. Uloma composed herself and she started learning about herbs from Mama Ejima. And not too long, she became good at it. She advised Mama Ejima and they opened a herb shop at the market square. And beside it, she placed some vegetables and food items there for people to buy. After a few months, Uloma gave birth to twins, Ejima, and it was a boy and a girl. The birth of the children changed her life. She decided to let go of the past and forget about everything that hurt her and focus on giving her children a better and worthy life. Soon, Mama Ejima retired from trading herbs and she volunteered to help Uloma take care of her children while she goes to the market to continue the business. She became very successful and found peace in her little family. Her children, Chisom and Chidera, grew up to be very respectful children and they referred to Mama Ejima as Nene. They had just brought education to the village and so Uloma enrolled Chidera and Chisom in the village learning center where they did excellently well. And when they graduated, they went to the College of Education in the town. All was well until one unfaithful day. Mama Ejima became sick and her old age began to tell on her. She knew she was about to join her ancestors and so she called Uloma and told her to reach out to Emeka so that her children can know their father and origin to avoid any abomination in the future. Uloma was not okay with the decision, but she promised Mama Ejima before she passed. Mama Ejima had no family. She had tragically lost her twin daughters and husband in a fire outbreak many years ago. Uloma reached out to her kinsmen and gave her a proper burial. Uloma and her children mourned her for a long time, and after a while, she thought about what Mama Ejima had told her, and she decided to go and unite the children with their father. On getting to the village, she asked the people about Emeka. A lot of them could not understand who she was referring to. She continued to ask around until she found Mama Oluchi, a woman she used to buy beans from back in the day. Mama Oluchi was so happy to see her and how good she had turned out to be. Uloma asked her about Emeka's whereabouts. "Sit down, my children," she said to Uloma, Chidera, and Chisom. She told Uloma that few months after she ran away from him, Emeka went to another village and married a very rich man's child and began to treat her badly after she stopped giving him money. One night, due to Emeka's lack of self-control and anger, He started beating the woman, but unfortunately for him, the woman hit his head with a pestle and Emeka died. When the woman realized what she had done, she picked some valuable things and ran to her father's house where no one could harm her. Emeka was buried somewhere close to the forest. Mama Oluchi took Uloma and the children to the graveside and they said their final goodbyes. Uloma forgave him and her children thanked her for living that night and they went back to their village together. When they got to the village, Uloma decided to reach out to her father and everyone who hurt her in the past. When she got to the house, her father was surprised at the way she had turned out. The old man had lost almost everything and people no longer respected him as they used to. He started crying and begged Uloma to forgive him for everything he did to her. Uloma forgave him and her children got to see their grandparents for the first time. She forgave all who hurt her in the past so she can heal completely. After some time, she went back to the village and continued her business, and her children became great people in the society. This is the end of this story. The moral of this story is to shun domestic violence, and also, like Mama Ejima, we should show compassion to victims as we might be the only one who can actually help them. Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you. Few days to the wedding, Ahmed told Tiwa that he cannot accept Tosin as his child and that she would not be. Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful girl named Tiwa. Tiwa was a hardworking and respectful girl, and she was loved in the village. She had a lot of suitors and admirers, but her heart only beat for Chike. Tiwa loved Chike so much, and he promised to marry her. One day, an unfortunate incident happened and Tiwa found out that she was pregnant. She became very scared and told Chike about it. But Chike denied the pregnancy and told her that he was not ready for marriage. Tiwa was broken and she decided to terminate it. She took some herbs to help her with it. When she was done, she told Chike, but Chike instantly ended the relationship and told Tiwa that she was not good enough for him. These words broke Tiwa and she cried for days. One day, when Tiwa was doing the house chores, she fell and fainted. Her mother quickly rushed her to the herbalist, and when she woke up, the herbalist told them that she fainted because the baby in her womb was reacting to the herbs she took. When they heard this, they were shocked. Tiwa began to cry because she thought she was no longer pregnant. Her mother began to shout and cry, and Tiwa immediately realized the gravity of what she had done. When they got home, Tiwa's mother told her father about what had just happened, and her father threw her out of the house and told her never to show her face in their house again, as it was an abomination to be pregnant before marriage. Tiwa went to Chike's house to tell him all that had happened, but Chike and his mother threw her out of the house and his mother forbade him for going close to Tiwa because she was a Yoruba girl. Out of frustration, Tiwa reached out to her relatives, and one of them helped her with some money to start up a new life. And Tiwa thanked her and left. She left the village and started a business. She worked very hard, and after some months, she gave birth to a baby girl and named her Tosin. She loved her child so much and worked very hard to provide a good life for her. After some time, she noticed some changes in Tosin's health. She was not like the rest of the children. This gave Tiwa some concerns, and she decided to seek help. She visited different herbalists. Some told her that the condition was incurable, while many told her that her daughter was a problem child. At some point, Tiwa was asked to make some sacrifices to the gods in order for them to cleanse the demon away from her daughter, as they believed she was possessed. But it turned out to be that she had what is now known as sickle cell. Tiwa continued to look for help until she met a herbalist who gave her some herbs to manage her daughter's condition. She continued to work very hard and take care of her child. After a few years, Tiwa fell in love again. His name was Ahmed. He was a trader from the neighboring village. During this period, she felt alive, as she had given up on love years ago. Not too long, Ahmed asked Tiwa to marry him, and she accepted. She was so happy that she couldn't contain her joy, and they began to make preparations for the wedding. Few days to the wedding, Ahmed told Tiwa that he cannot accept Tosin as his child, and that she would not be living with them after the wedding. Tiwa was heartbroken and she begged Ahmed, but he insisted and told her that she would bring bad luck to their future children. With doubts of ever finding love again, Tiwa agreed to all that Ahmed said. She took Tosin to go and live with Ahmed's auntie, and after they got married, Ahmed moved in with Tiwa, and soon he began to embark on his numerous trips, which usually takes weeks before they see each other. Tiwa did not mind the arrangement, and she continued to work hard and also support Ahmed's business. One day, an unfortunate incident happened, and Tosin began to have her usual crisis. Her auntie gave her some herbs, but it did not stop, and so she decided to give her everything so it would work faster. But unfortunately, she gave her an overdose, and few minutes later, Tosin died. Soon, the news got to Tiwa and she fainted. She cried for days, but her tears could not bring her daughter back, and she immediately started regretting ever neglecting her. Few months passed and Tiwa was yet to see Ahmed. She became worried that something bad might have happened to him, and coupled with the fact that she had lended him a huge amount of money from her business to help him get more goods. After some time, she decided to look for him. She asked the traders Ahmed usually followed, but they didn't really know much. So she decided to follow them to his village. When they got to the village, she received the greatest shock of her life. She found out that Ahmed was a married man with 5 children. It turned out to be that he normally travels across villages and targets rich women and married them for their money. And when he was done getting all he wanted, he would disappear and they would never see him again. When Tiwa found out about this, she was shocked and began to cry and regret ever marrying him and neglecting her own child. She could not do anything to Ahmed because she was not from the village, and so she lost everything, including her own child. This betrayal broke Tiwa, and she never remained the same again. This is the end of this story. The moral of this story is to never neglect our loved ones, especially those who need us the most. Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you. Whenever she goes into the village, some people would begin to mock her because they were always jealous of her. Uma had to stand up for herself. She began to beat anyone who dared to make trouble. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Uma. She was the only child of her parents and they loved her so dearly. Her parents tried their best to have another child, but they were unable to. Many people advised her father to take another wife so she can bear him more children. But Uma's father refused because he loved his wife and daughter so much and did not want anything to come between them. Uma's father was a respected man in the village and a very close friend to the king. He had passion for hunting, and most days he would come home with bushmeat of different kinds. One day, in one of his hunts, he was mistakenly shot by his men and he died. His death shattered his family's heart and they never remained the same. Uma's mother lost her sanity as a result of the shock. And not too long, her uncles came and drove them out of the house because her father had no son and they left them with nothing. Uma was just a teenager at the time and barely knew anything about life. She had to start working in order to be able to take care of herself and her mentally sick mother. All her friends neglected her and they began to mock her because they no longer benefited from her. Some called her the daughter of a mad woman, while others called her the daughter of a weak hunter. Uma reached out to her relatives, but no one was willing to help. They told her that she and her mother were going to be a burden to them, despite all the help her father rendered to them when he was alive. All this broke her heart, and she decided to work very hard. She and her mother began to live in a lonely abandoned hut far from the village square. Even rumor had it that the hut belonged to a witch and her spirit hovered around, and so the villagers never went there. Uma started farming and she converted the land to her farm and planted all sorts of crops on it. And when it was time, she would take them to the market to sell and use from the profits to take care of herself and her mother. Whenever she goes into the village, some people would begin to mock her because they were always jealous of her. Uma had to stand up for herself. She began to beat anyone who dared to make trouble. She did it for a long time, and soon people became scared of her. And whenever they see her coming, they will quickly run away. One day, a man named Ikenna was taking an evening stroll with his friends when Uma walked past them without uttering a word. Ikenna's pride could not let him go, and so he went and confronted Uma. But Uma insulted him, and when he refused to let her go, Uma punched him. But Ikenna punched her back on the face and she fainted, and blood started coming out of her eyes. When Ikenna's friends saw this, they ran away as they thought Ikenna had killed her. A kind villager saw the scene and quickly rushed to Uma and helped her. When Uma woke up, the woman asked her exactly what happened, and Uma told her. The young man was actually Prince Ikenna, and he was known for oppressing people in the village. A lot of villagers had previously reported him to the king, but there was not enough evidence to back up their claim, and so the king did not believe them. The woman found that to be the perfect opportunity to prove to the king that his son was not who he said he was. She asked the man to follow her to the palace, and she did. Some people also followed them. When Prince Ikenna saw them, he was shocked. They told the king everything and showed him Uma's eyes. The king was so disappointed at his son, and he apologized to Uma and asked her who she was. When Uma introduced herself, the king was surprised because her father was a good friend of his. The king could not allow her to go like that because of what Prince Ikenna had done to her. He summoned some elders and told them that Prince Ikenna must marry Uma, as it would be difficult for Uma to find a suitor in the village after the prince had rendered her almost blind. The elders all agreed because it was an abomination to lay hands on a woman in the village, talk more of almost blinding her. The king pleaded with Uma to marry her son and also promised her that if he ever laid his hands on her again, he would be stripped off of all royal privileges. At first, Uma refused because she barely knew the prince. But when she remembered all the bullying and discrimination, she gave it a second thought because she and her mother would be able to live a normal life again. Immediately she accepted, the king and elders fixed a date for the marriage and ordered the town crier to announce it to the village. Prince Ikenna was furious, but he couldn't do anything because his father threatened to disown him. He had no choice than to accept the arrangement. 2 market days later, Prince Ikenna and Uma got married. Uma became the envy of the village, and all who bullied and humiliated her started respecting her. She felt alive once again, and her mother started living with them in the palace. The king did no longer allow her to go to the farm, and she was given all she ever wanted. But Uma was not entirely happy. She often thought of the misery she might have caused the prince. She tried all she could to be nice to Prince Ikenna, but he avoided her like she never existed. Most of the time, they would argue all through the day, but when they see the king, they would pretend to be getting along. Prince Ikenna hated Uma so much, but he couldn't do anything about it. This went on for a long time, and they both continued to cohabitate. One day, Prince Ikenna was rushed to the palace. He was mistakenly shot with an arrow and was badly injured. When Uma saw him, she began to cry and hoped that nothing bad happens to him, as that was how her father died. All through that period, she took care of Prince Ikenna, and she would always sing for him. Even when the prince was unconscious, he could hear her singing and he loved her voice. Uma did this for days, and she would apply medicine to his wounds all the time. When the prince became conscious, Uma did not stop. She continued to take good care of him till he was fully recovered. The prince was surprised because he thought Uma was not a good person. One day, when Uma had finished putting medicine in his wounds, Ikenna asked her why she was helping him, and she told him that she doesn't like to see him hurt. When Ikenna heard this, he was touched, as no one had ever cared for him that much. When Uma was about leaving, he thanked her for everything and she left. Ever since that day, Prince Ikenna became very kind towards Uma and he started treating her well. Ikenna apologized to Uma for hurting her and promised never to treat her badly again. After some time, Uma found out that Ikenna was just like her. He was bullied by his step-siblings after his mother died. And so he decided to demand respect from everyone and also punish anyone who dared to disrespect him. And because of this, his step-siblings had no choice but to respect him the way he wanted to be respected. Uma felt so sad and forgave him, and they both became very good friends. And not too long, they fell in love with each other. The king was so happy to see them getting along and also seeing his son happy after so many years. The entire village were shocked by how much they changed. Uma continued to take care of her sick mother, and not too long she started getting better. Uma and Ikenna's love for each other grew stronger each passing day. And after some time, they were blessed with children, and they lived happily ever after. This is the end of this story. Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you. And after some time, she added more weight because she was nursing her daughter, but this did not sit well with her husband. He constantly reminded her of how fat she had become. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Olana. She was the most beautiful girl in the village and everyone loved her. Olana was very hardworking and respectful, and all the elders in the village wished for her to marry their son. Her beauty was like that of 7 maidens. She was admired by all the eligible bachelors in the village, and they all wished to marry her, even those that were very rich. But Olana chose Ejike, her long-time love. When it was time for her to get married, her mother advised her to rethink her decision about marrying Ejike because he was a poor man and could barely take care of himself, talk more of a family. But Olana stood her ground and insisted that Ejike was the only man she would be able to marry. Her parents had no choice than to support her decision, and they got married. After their wedding, Olana began to support Ejike's dreams. She would help him in the farm and also help sell the harvest in the market. This went on for a long time and Ejike's story began to change. He was no longer the poor man people knew him to be. And all this was possible because of Olana. Olana and Ejike tried for some years to have children, but they couldn't. She began to visit different herbalists for help, and they gave her all sorts of herbs and concoction to drink. After some time, Olana became pregnant. They were so happy as their prayers had come to pass, and Ejike showered her with all sorts of gifts. All was going well until Olana began to put on some weight. Ejike began to avoid her, and whenever she's eating, her husband will begin to look at her with disgusting eyes. This made Olana so sad, and she decided to talk to Ejike about it. She told Ejike all that she had been feeling lately and asked why he was neglecting her. And Ejike told her that she had begun to add too much weight, which is making her look like an elephant and causing her beauty to fade away. When Olana heard this, she was so sad and she began to cry. She told Ejike that it was as a result of the pregnancy, and further told him that once the baby was born, the food cravings would stop. But Ejike was not satisfied with the answer. They continued to live like that, and Olana could not wait to give birth so she could go back to the way she used to be. She could not tell her mother about what happened because she had warned her not to marry him. And so, she kept everything to herself and waited for when she would give birth. After a few weeks, Olana gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. Everyone was very happy as they had waited for years. Ejike was not very happy as he thought the child would be a boy. But Olana told him that they would try again, and they named the child Ada. Olana became very happy ever since she had her daughter. And after some time, she added more weight because she was nursing her daughter. But this did not sit well with her husband. He constantly reminded her of how fat she had become. After a few months, he sent all the maids in the house away. He claimed that they were the reason Olana became lazy, and that if she starts doing the chores by herself, she wouldn't have the time to be eating and getting fat. This broke Olana's heart, and she had no choice than to take care of her family and the home all by herself. When her mother came visiting, she asked Olana what happened to the servants, and Olana lied to her that they all resigned and left because she didn't increase their pay. Her mother did not believe her, and she began to suspect that something was wrong. After a while, she became used to the routine, but this did not make her lose any weight, even when she wanted it to. Whenever Olana came close to her husband, he would look at her in disgust, and after a while, she stopped trying. Not too long, Ejike married a second wife, and she was very beautiful as well. And she was from the neighboring village. When this happened, Olana was heartbroken as she never expected her husband to betray her in such a manner. She finally opened up to her mother and told her all that she had been going through. Her mother was shocked and she consoled her. She told Olana that her house was always opened for her. She advised Olana to start doing something for herself so she wouldn't be dependent on Ejike. Olana took her mother's advice and began to trade. Early in the morning, she would give her daughter Ada to her mother before going to the market. And later in the day, she would come and pick her up when she was done selling in the market. She continued like this for a long time, and after a while, she stopped paying attention to Ejike and his new wife. One day, Ada was playing in the backyard and she mistakenly broke a plate. When Ejike's second wife saw this, she gave Ada a beating of her life. When Ada started screaming, Olana came out and saw the new wife beating her daughter. In anger, she descended on her and warned her never to touch her child again. When Olana and Ada got inside, Olana asked Ada to tell her what happened, and Ada told her about the plate. When Olana went to see the type of plate it was so she could replace it, she found out that the plate actually belonged to her. It was among the things her mother bought for her when she got married. She was furious and she decided to tell Ejike about it. But Ejike supported the new wife and told Olana that her daughter was as useless as her. When Olana heard this, she started crying and she never expected such words from Ejike. She couldn't take it anymore. She packed her bags and left the house with her daughter Ada and began to live with her mother. She continued to work very hard, and after some time, she built a house and moved in with her daughter. Meanwhile, Ejike asked her to return her bride price, and her people did. And his second wife gave birth to a son for him. After a while, a man named Obinna asked for her hand in marriage, and she was shocked. Obinna was her friend way back. He had always loved her, but she was blinded by her feelings for Ejike. And he married a lovely lady few years after Olana got married to Ejike, but tragically lost her to childbirth shortly after. When Obinna found out that Olana was no longer married, he decided to ask for her hand in marriage, as he had always loved her and the two of them were still very good friends. Olana was scared and she told him to give her some time to think about it. When Olana told her mother, she advised her to go ahead with the marriage as Obinna was a very good man and his family was respected in the society. Olana hesitated at first, and when Obinna asked her the reason she rejected his proposal, Olana told him that she was too fat and ugly to be with him. Obinna was surprised, and he told her that she wasn't ugly and that she was the most beautiful woman he knew. These words melted her heart, and Obinna advised her to be more confident in her skin. After a few weeks, Olana and Obinna got married, and Obinna treated Ada like his own child, and soon they were blessed with other children. One day, Olana came back. A woman had laughed at her at the market square. When Olana told her husband Obinna, he asked her to turn lemons into lemonades. "What does that mean?" she said to Obinna. Obinna advised her to use her body size to her advantage. He advised her to embrace the name and be proud of it instead of feeling bad. Olana took his advice, and whenever they called her big, she would embrace it and begin to brag with it. Soon, people knew her as the big woman, and whenever they came to her shop to buy anything, they would begin to call her the big woman, the tigress herself, and so many other names. And instead of her to be sad, she would begin to dance for them, and they would even buy more than they came for. Soon, she took over the market, and her competitors began to work for her as they no longer had customers. She became very popular in the village, and everyone were happy to see her because of the joy in her heart. Meanwhile, Ejike was set up by his new wife after he found out that the child was not his, and she parted away with his property and left him with nothing and no one to help him. He went to Olana and began to beg for forgiveness. And when he saw how Olana's life turned out, he started regretting ever treating her badly. Obinna begged Olana to forgive him because of Ada, and she did, and she warned him never to step his foot in her house again. Because of the pity they had for him, Obinna referred him to his friend, and he began to work in his plantation as one of his laborers, so he can be able to meet ends needs. Olana and Obinna's businesses continued to flourish, and their children had the best parents and lived happily ever after. This is the end of this story.
Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you.
Prince Adewale told Ireti that their relationship had to end. Ireti was heartbroken and she begged Prince Adewale, but he had no change of heart. Few days later, once upon a time, there lived a king and queen. They had a son called Adewale. Prince Adewale was the crown prince and the only son of his parents. He was very handsome and all the maidens in the village admired and wished to marry him. Prince Adewale only had eyes for Ireti, the daughter of a farmer. Even though his parents were engaged their love, Prince Adewale loved Ireti so much and treated her like a princess. Prince Adewale's parents were engaged their love because Ireti was from a very poor home and not from a royal home. But this did not stop the prince and Ireti. He would help Ireti to do their farm works and also to fetch water from the river. One day, an unfortunate incident happened and the king became very sick. And before he died, he made the prince promise him to get married immediately to a princess they chose for him, so he can be crowned king. Prince Adewale was sad, but he wasn't left with any choice than to promise his father, as that was his dying wish. The king's death shook everyone in the village, and few days later, Prince Adewale told Ireti that their relationship had to end. Ireti was heartbroken and she begged Prince Adewale, but he had no change of heart. Few days later, Prince Adewale got married to a princess named Abeni and he was crowned king. When this happened, a lot of people started talking about Ireti. She became the subject of all the gossips in the village. After a while, she could not take the humiliation anymore and she left the village. Every passing day reminded Oba Adewale of his true love, Ireti. He secretly sent some people to look for her, but no one was able to find her. Many years passed and King Adewale and Queen Abeni continued to endure their loveless marriage. They had 4 daughters together and tried to have a son, but they couldn't. Their children were nothing to write home about. They were very arrogant and disrespectful towards everyone, including their elders. Everyone in the village avoided them because they were evil. King Adewale's mother advised him to take another wife so as to have an heir, but he refused and told her that he would only be able to marry one wife. Queen Abeni hated her so much because she wanted her daughter to rule after King Adewale had passed, even though it was an abomination in the village for a woman to rule. And so she tried all she could to get rid of the king's mother, but it was to no avail. King Adewale's mother continued to persuade the king, but he continued to refuse. The king's mother started regretting what they did to Ireti and the king, and she wished she could turn back the hands of time. She thought of how the king's life would have been if he had married Ireti, because Ireti was a very good girl from a good home, and she brought the king so much happiness. One day, when the king and his friends were hunting in the forest, they were attacked by some people, and some of the guards were killed. But when they were about to harm the king, a young man came out of the forest and killed the bandits and rescued the king and his friends. The king was shocked by what happened and thanked the young man for saving his life. When the young man was about leaving, the king called him back and asked him what his name was. And he told the king his name was Adetunji. The king invited him to the palace and Adetunji followed them. When they got to the palace, Oba Adewale asked him who he was. And Adetunji told him that he was a son of the soil, but he grew up with his mother in the village far away. The king offered him a job to be one of his trusted guards, and Adetunji accepted and began to work in the palace. Not too long, the princesses started having problems with him because he refused to be used for their selfish and wicked acts. The queen reported him to the king so he can be sacked, but this made the king like him more because he had integrity. Oba Adewale grew fond of Adetunji and he started treating him like the son he never had. And Adetunji was also very loyal to the king. One day, Adetunji received a sad news that his mother was very sick and was at the verge of dying. He told the king about it and he asked for some days off. Oba Adewale permitted him and he also asked his very good friend to accompany him in case he needed anything and also to know more about him and his family. When they got to the house, the king's friend and Adetunji's mother immediately recognized each other and she began to cry. It turned out that Adetunji's mother was Ireti. Ireti was so happy to see him, but the man was sad because of Ireti's condition, and he started making preparation to take her to the palace for proper treatment. When Adetunji saw this, he asked them how they knew each other, and Ireti told him that that was the main reason she called for him, as she could not take the secret to the grave. She sat Adetunji down and began to tell him everything. It turned out that Adetunji was the son of Oba Adewale. Ireti found out she was pregnant for Oba Adewale after she had traveled far away from the village. Because of the heartbreak and humiliation, she couldn't go back to tell him about the pregnancy, and also because of the hatred she had for him when he abandoned her and married another woman. When the king's friend and Adetunji heard this, they were shocked. The man started reflecting on the resemblance, and he was so happy that Oba Adewale had an heir. He thanked Ireti for keeping the child and also raising him to be an honorable person in the society. Ireti asked her son for forgiveness and begged him to go and reunite with his father. And the man promised her that he would make sure of that. And she died a while later. Adetunji buried her and mourned her for days. And after 7 days, they went back to the palace, and the king's friend told the king everything that happened. The king was devastated when he heard that Ireti had died, but he was more than happy when he was told that Adetunji was his son. He had always wanted him to be his son, and this was like a dream come true because Adetunji was an honorable man. He immediately sent the town criers to announce Adetunji's return round the village. Everyone was happy to hear about this. Oba Adewale's mother immediately sorted out royal attires for him, and they began to give him the privileges of a prince. But this did not sit well with Queen Abeni and her daughters. She poisoned the prince's food, but unfortunately for her, the maid saw her and told the king's mother about it. Queen Abeni was summoned and she denied poisoning the food. The king ordered her to eat the food if truly she was innocent, and she immediately started confessing. Prince Adetunji begged his father not to send her to the gallows, but because of the gravity of the crime, Queen Abeni was banished from the village and never to return. The princesses learned a lesson from the situation, and they had no choice than to turn a new leaf and accept Prince Adetunji. Few days later, Adetunji was crowned prince and the kingdom lived in love and unity. The king's mother began to advise people not to look down on their children's good partners, as they may regret it in the future. This is the end of this story.
Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you. She went to Iyabo and laid a curse on her. You will find love and have a very beautiful family, but the evil you have committed will come back and haunt you. She said to Iyabo and died. Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Iyabo. She was a very beautiful and hardworking girl. Iyabo was the apple of her mother's eye. She lost her father at a very young age, and so her mother single-handedly raised her. Despite Iyabo's beauty and hard work, people avoided her. She was a chronic gossip. She went around the village spreading information about people's lives. Iyabo had two friends called Tinu and Bambam, and they were just like her. In one way or the other, they often find ways to get sensitive information about people in the village, and they would not hesitate to spread it around the village. Iyabo's mother advised her several times to avoid gossiping, but she never listened, as that was her hobby. And the villagers named her Amebo because of that. Few years passed, and they succeeded in ruining a lot of families. When Tinu realized that they were causing too much harm, she told Iyabo and Bambam that they needed to stop. When Bambam realized the truth in what Tinu was saying, she agreed to repent, but Iyabo refused. She told them that they were people pleasers. Tinu and Bambam realized that Iyabo would never change, and so they decided to cut ties with her and apologize to the villagers for all the harm they have caused them. Iyabo felt betrayed by their acts and vowed to teach them a lesson. One day, a girl named Bimpe was about getting married. Bimpe was the oldest among the maidens in the village. She had bad luck when it came to suitors and marriage, and even her mates had gotten married long time ago, and some of them even had teenage children. Bimpe was still unmarried. It troubled her so much because she became a laughingstock in the village. When she finally found a man to marry her, she was so happy, and her mother quickly began to make arrangements for the wedding. Few days to the wedding, Iyabo went to Bimpe's fiancé Kunle and told him Bimpe's secret from her past. It turned out that when Bimpe was very young, she was assaulted by her uncle.
and she became pregnant. Her uncle denied it and accused her of sleeping around. In order to protect Bimpe's image, her mother took her to a herbalist and he gave her some herbs to terminate the pregnancy. This became Bimpe's secret and she told no one about it. Iyabo heard some part of the story when Bimpe's mother was telling her not to tell Kunle about it, and so she decided to tell him herself. Iyabo told Kunle that Bimpe used to sleep around, and at one time she got pregnant and terminated the pregnancy, and that was the reason no man in the village wanted to marry her. When Kunle heard this, he was devastated. He had recently moved to the village and knew nothing much about the village and the villagers. He felt he had been deceived and he immediately called off the wedding. When Bimpe heard this, he decided to ask Kunle the reason he did so. And when Kunle questioned her about her virginity, Bimpe was confused and thought Kunle had discovered her secret. And so she began to stammer and ran home immediately to tell her mother. Kunle could not bear the humiliation anymore. He packed his bags and prepared to go back to his village. When he was about leaving, Bimpe's mother approached him and asked him how he found out about the pregnancy. And Kunle told her that it was Iyabo that told him everything. Amebo has succeeded in ruining our lives, she cried out. She went home and told Bimpe everything. Bimpe cried for days and the news spread round the village like wildfire, and some villagers began to mock her. Bimpe could not take it anymore and so she took her own life. Her death shook her mother and she cried for several days. Her fragile heart could not take it any longer. She went to Iyabo and laid a curse on her. You will find love and have a very beautiful family, but the evil you have committed will come back and haunt you. She said to Iyabo and died. Iyabo was scared, and the villagers came out and dragged her to the palace. They told the king everything that happened and how Iyabo had been ruining people's lives. The king had no choice than to banish her from the village. This news broke her mother's heart and she became very sick and died after a few days. Iyabo wandered for days until she came to a land called Umunede. A kind woman named Iyatope saw her and gave her shelter. Iyabo started reflecting on everything and wished she had followed Tinu and Bambam. She became very sorry for her actions, but it was too late. She lost everything, including her mother, her friends, and her home. Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you. You will find love and have a very beautiful family, but the evil you have committed will come back and haunt you. She said to Iyabo and died. Iyatope noticed Iyabo's sadness and constant thinking, and she asked Iyabo to tell her everything. Iyabo decided to hide the truth from her, and she told her a different story. Iyatope promised to help her to become a better version of herself and encouraged her to pick up her pieces. Iyabo thanked her for everything, and the next day, she started assisting the kind woman and also helping her business. Iyatope took Iyabo as her own daughter and treated her well, and Iyabo did the same in return. Things started going well for Iyabo, and Iyatope's business continued to flourish. After some months, Iyabo started her own business and Iyatope supported her. One day, when Iyabo was selling in the market, she captured the eyes of a very handsome man named Ayomide. Ayomide was a very successful trader in the village, and all the maidens had eyes on him. He gradually started getting closer to Iyabo, and after some time, he told Iyabo how he felt about her and asked her to marry him. Iyabo was so happy and she agreed and told Iyatope about it, and they both started preparing for the wedding. When Ayomide told his parents about his intentions to marry Iyabo, his mother refused because Iyabo was not from their village and no one truly knew where she was from. Ayomide begged his mother, but she refused. After begging for a long time, Ayomide decided to go against his mother's wish and he got married to Iyabo. Iyabo's mother-in-law hated her so much, but she endured because of the love she and her husband had for each other. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and Iyabo became pregnant, and when it was time, she gave birth to a son. Each passing day, the love she shared with her husband became stronger, and not too long, she became pregnant again and had a daughter. This love continued, and in the space of 6 years, Iyabo and her husband had 5 children, and their businesses became even more prosperous. Ayomide and Iyabo continued to dwell in love, and they became the envy of the village until one day, all her children became sick, and no herbalist was able to treat them. They began to die one after the other, and in the space of 2 weeks, Iyabo lost all her children. This was strange as the villagers had never experienced it. Ayomide's mother began to accuse Iyabo and claimed that she was a witch and that she sacrificed her children in the coven. These words broke Iyabo as she was also mourning her children. Ayomide did not stop there. He began to look for the cause of his children's deaths. And in one of the places he visited, he was told that his wife Iyabo was the cause of their deaths. He was furious and he went home to confront Iyabo, but Iyabo was still in the state of shock and was unable to speak. The villagers continued to talk, and while they were at it, a woman from Iyabo's village came to Ayomide's village to trade, and she heard the news. She asked the villager who Iyabo was, and they told her. When she found out that it was Amebo, she started screaming and told everyone that she was cursed and banished from their village because of her evil acts. Everyone was shocked, including Iyatope, and she realized that Iyabo lied to everyone. When Ayomide's mother heard this, she started shouting and calling Iyabo a witch and threw her out of her son's house. The villagers started throwing dirt at her, and she was casted out of the village. Iyabo never remained the same again. The old woman's curse kept on playing on her head, and she lost her sanity and began to roam around like a mad woman. This is the end of this story. The moral of this story is to be watchful of the things we say about people, as there is always karma. Thank you for listening to this story. If you want us to make more videos, hit on the like and subscribe button below.
and comment which country you are watching from. We love and appreciate you.